Hey guys, I hope all is well. Today we're going to kind of continue our thread of the liturgy and the sacraments, focusing more this week on the sacraments. Going into this part of our church doctrine, the sacraments are my favorite part of being Catholic, believe it or not. Number one is Eucharist. Number two is the sacraments. Number three is Mary. Number four is the saints, just in case you guys were wondering. But the sacraments are my absolute favorite part of being Catholic. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about defining them. And I really think that this section of the course is going to allow you guys to dive deeply into your faith, into the kinds of things that we practice all the time. And to show you why religion is important, right? We're not just faithful believers, relationship, me and God, we're good. There's a reason that we have the structured religion that we do, and a reason that it's fulfilling for human beings. Okay, so what is a sacrament? First of all, sacrament just comes from the Latin root word meaning holiness or holy, right? Sanctus means holy. Sacrament is something that makes you holy, right? Pretty cool. So we need the sacraments to help us become holy. And there's a three-part definition that I want to give you. I want to just kind of give you a rundown of what exactly a sacrament is, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what it does. How does a sacrament make us holy? So first of all, the three-part definition of sacrament is the first part, an outward sign. Okay, so a sacrament is an outward sign, meaning that there's something we can sense. Right? God in his wisdom knew that as human beings, we're going to have a hard time with faith if there's nothing we can sense. So the sacraments appeal to our hearing, our taste, our touch. It appeals to our smell, right? So in what ways? We can taste the bread and wine of the Eucharist, right? It gives us something to taste. We can hear the words of the priest in the confessional. We can feel the oil and the water as we're baptized as babies and as we're anointed when we're sick, and as we're confirmed. We can feel the oil. We can smell the oil. As a sacramental in the Mass, right? It's not one of the seven sacraments, but it's still something that draws us into our faith and helps us to become holy. As we can smell the incense, right? When we smell incense, oftentimes we think of the Mass. Right? And when we smell incense, we think of the rising of smoke, of the lifting up of our prayers and our sacrifice to God. So I think that it's extremely generous that God in his wisdom set up this order of outward signs where we could sense the holiness that God is drawing us into. So the second part of the definition is that it was instituted by Christ. Some outward sign instituted by Christ. And so those that believe that religion was created by human beings are wrong. Right? It's not the construct of human beings. This is something, every single sacrament that we partake in was in some way instituted by Christ. It was begun by him. And so we're going to talk about in each sacrament the way in which it was begun by Christ, because many Protestants will say not all seven sacraments are found in Scripture, but in fact they are, right? And we're going to talk about how Christ himself is the one who began the practice of each of these sacraments. So an outward sign instituted by Christ to confer an inward grace. So there are outward signs that we partake in, but the whole goal of the sacrament is to get to the heart. Right? And so the sacrament is really not effective if we don't allow it into our hearts and allow it to transform our lives. Okay, so the point of the outward sign is to confer some inward grace, to give us this opportunity to be transformed, to be transformed into the kinds of creatures God created us to be, but also the kinds of creatures that can exist in relationship and unity with him and with others. So this is the goal. So that's the definition of a sacrament, outward sign instituted by Christ to confer inward grace. And this is what we participate in all seven sacraments. And so back to our question, How does a sacrament make us holy? So first of all, what is holiness? Holiness is drawing near to God. That's essentially what holiness is, because the word is used for saints primarily. And a saint is someone who we understand to be in heaven, or someone who we understand to be in total union with God. Okay, but the word saint is also used by the early church fathers for the believers that are still living today, right? So the holy ones. And holiness is this nearness to God, but how can you be near to God in this life? Well, first of all, Jesus Christ was incarnate. He became human in order to be near to us. This is God coming near to us. But then he also left us a church with sacraments that are also signs of God's coming near to us. More than signs, it is God coming near to us in the sacraments, right? That's why the sacraments are primarily practiced in the form of liturgy, right? There's a liturgy in which the sacrament is bestowed upon the believers. So liturgy is precisely the place where God comes to meet his beings, his followers. He comes to meet his disciples. He comes down from heaven to earth in a sacramental form in order to do what? In order to draw near to our hearts, but not in a way that is condescending for him, but in a way that draws us up into his life. Right? That is the goal of every sacrament, is not to meet us where we're at and leave us where we're at, but to bring us up into the divine life, to make us holy, to make us near to God. Okay, so the whole goal of every single sacrament, and primarily the Eucharist, which is God himself, is to give us this union with God, is to elevate our nature into a unity with him, which the church teaches is our ultimate happiness. Right? So every single sacrament, and the beauty and the dignity of a sacrament, is that it appeals to your human nature, not to leave you in a fallen state, but to bring you up into a state of eternal happiness. So I hope that you guys have learned something that maybe you didn't know before about sacraments, and I hope that throughout this segment you'll gain a greater appreciation for what a sacrament is and for what it's doing in your life. Blessings, and please continue to at least watch the Mass during this pandemic.